The invisible woman who caught a king's eye. She was nobody, a ghost serving champagne to men who ruled cities, until one man saw her, really saw her, and everything shattered. Adrian Morelli didn't just notice Lena Carter that night in the VIP lounge. He claimed her with a look that stripped away every lie she told herself about safety and invisibility. Now she stands at the edge of his world, where power is currency and danger wears expensive suits. One choice will define her: disappear back into the shadows or step into the light and burn. If you're hooked, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. The chandelier above Lena Carter's head cost more than her entire year's salary. She knew this because she'd overheard Mrs. Vanderberg mention it to her companion while Lena refilled their champagne glasses, invisible, as always. The crystal monstrosity hung like a frozen waterfall in the center of the ballroom, throwing fractured light across marble floors that her feet were already screaming against. 3 hours into her shift, 5 more to go. Lena moved through the crowd with practiced efficiency, her black server's uniform blending into the shadows between the gilded columns. The Ashford Hotel's annual charity gala drew Manhattan's elite like moths to flame. Old money, new money, and the kind of money that didn't bother with classifications. Women dripped in diamonds that could fund small countries. Men wore watches worth more than houses. And Lena Carter, 32 years old and newly divorced, carried their drinks and picked up their half-eaten hors d'oeuvres. "Excuse me." A woman's voice, sharp with the particular impatience of someone who'd never been told no. Lena turned, smile already fixed in place. "These canapes are cold." They weren't. Lena had watched them come out of the kitchen 60 seconds ago. But she nodded anyway, murmured an apology, and whisked the plate away. Invisibility was survival. Complaints rolled off her back like rain off glass. She'd learned that the hard way. 6 months ago, she'd been Lena Morrison, married to a semi-successful investment banker, living in a decent apartment in Brooklyn, planning a future that included maybe a dog, maybe kids, maybe something that resembled happiness. Then she'd come home early from her teaching job to find Marcus in their bed with his assistant, and the carefully constructed illusion of her life had collapsed like a house of cards in a hurricane. The divorce had been brutal. Marcus had money for lawyers, Lena had student debt, and a teaching salary that barely covered rent. He'd walked away with the apartment, the car, and her dignity. She'd walked away with nothing but a suitcase and the crushing realization that she'd spent a decade making herself smaller for a man who'd never really seen her at all. Teaching jobs were scarce mid-semester. Bills didn't care about timing. So here she was, serving people who wouldn't remember her face if she stood in front of them twice. "Lena?" Maria, the floor manager, appeared at her elbow. "VIP lounge, 3rd floor. They need someone up there." Lena's stomach sank. The VIP lounge was notorious among the staff. High-profile guests, impossible demands, and tips that ranged from obscenely generous to insultingly non-existent. But you didn't say no to Maria. On it. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor was blissfully quiet. Lena leaned against the mirrored wall and closed her eyes, just for a second. Her reflection stared back when she opened them. Pale skin, dark circles she'd tried to cover with drugstore concealer, blonde hair pulled into a tight bun that was giving her a headache. She looked tired. She looked defeated. She looked like someone who didn't belong here. The VIP lounge was a different world. Where the ballroom was all glittering excess, the space was quiet luxury. Dark wood paneling, leather furniture the color of expensive whiskey, lighting soft enough to hide secrets. A handful of guests occupied the space, their conversations low murmurs beneath jazz that poured from hidden speakers. And in the corner, in a wingback chair that might as well have been a throne, sat a man who made Lena's carefully maintained composure stumble. He wasn't the most handsome man in the room. There was something too sharp about his features, too severe in the line of his jaw. Dark hair touched with gray at the temples. A suit that probably cost what she made in 6 months, fitted to a frame that suggested discipline rather than vanity. But it was his eyes that stopped her, dark, assessing, and currently fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Most people looked through Lena. This man looked at her like he was reading a book written in her bones. "Can I get you anything?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Whiskey. Neat. The Macallan 25 if they have it." His voice matched everything else about him. Controlled, precise, with an edge that suggested he was used to being obeyed, not asking, informing. Of course. She turned toward the bar, but his voice stopped her. You're new. It wasn't a question. Lena glanced back. New to the VIP lounge. I usually work the main floor. Promotion or punishment? The question surprised her enough that she answered honestly. Depends on the tips. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Fair enough. Lena retrieved his whiskey from the bartender, who raised an eyebrow at the order but didn't comment, and returned to the corner. The man accepted the glass without looking at it, his attention still locked on her face. Thank you. He paused, clearly waiting. Lena. Lena. He repeated her name like he was testing its weight. I'm Adrian. She should have walked away, should have smiled politely, and moved on to the next guest. But something in his gaze held her there, rooted to the expensive carpet like her feet had forgotten how to move. You don't want to be here. Again, not a question. Lena's professional mask slipped. Does anyone want to work an 8-hour shift in heels? I meant the city, this life. Adrian took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving hers. You're wearing invisibility like armor, but it doesn't fit quite right. Heat crept up her neck, embarrassment, and something else, something uncomfortable. Who the hell did this man think he was? I should sit. The command was quiet, but absolute. And Lena, who'd spent 6 months taking orders from people who didn't see her as human, found herself obeying. She perched on the edge of the chair across from him, hyper-aware that she was breaking about 15 hotel policies. I know. Adrian set down his glass. You follow the rules. Keep your head down. Don't make waves. It's kept you safe, hasn't it? Safe from what? From being seen. From being hurt. From mattering enough to be vulnerable. He leaned forward slightly. How's that working out for you? Lena should have been offended. Should have stood up and walked away from this stranger who presumed to know anything about her life. Instead, she felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd been holding closed with both hands for months. You don't know me. No, Adrian agreed. But I recognize the expression. I've seen it in the mirror. And what expression is that? Someone who's been erased, piece by piece, until you're not sure there's anything left worth finding. The words hit like a physical blow. Lena's hands trembled slightly, and she clasped them together in her lap. That's a hell of an assumption to make about your server. You're not my server right now. Right now, you're someone I'm having a conversation with. Adrian's gaze softened fractionally. When was the last time someone really looked at you, Lena? Not through you. At you. Never. The answer rose unbidden. Marcus had looked at her like a convenience. Her parents, before they died, had looked at her with disappointment that she wasn't more ambitious, more successful, more something. Her friends from before the divorce had looked at her with pity that made her want to crawl out of her skin. But this man, this stranger, looked at her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. I should get back to work. Lena stood, needing distance, needing air, needing to rebuild the walls he'd somehow breached in less than 5 minutes. Enjoy your evening, Mr. Morelli. Adrian Morelli. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a card, heavy stock, embossed lettering. He held it out to her. In case you ever get tired of being invisible. Lena took the card reflexively. No company name, just a phone number printed in simple black font. What is this? A choice. Adrian stood as well, and she realized he was taller than she'd thought. Probably 6'2", built like someone who knew how to handle himself in situations where expensive suits didn't matter. You don't have to make it tonight, but the offer stands. I don't even know what you're offering. A way out. His smile was slight, dangerous. Or a way in, depends on your perspective. Before she could respond, Maria's voice crackled over the discreet earpiece all servers wore. Lena, main floor, now. Mrs. Chen is asking for you specifically. Of course she was. Lena glanced at the card in her hand, then back at Adrian Morelli, who watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I have to go. I know. He settled back into his chair, retrieving his whiskey. Don't lose that card. Lena fled. There was no other word for it. She walked quickly toward the elevator, the card burning in her palm like a brand. In the mirrored walls of the elevator, she studied it again. Just a number. No context. No explanation. Who the hell was Adrian Morelli? The question haunted her through the rest of her shift. She smiled at guests, refilled drinks, cleared plates, and collected tips while her mind spun in circles. The card stayed in her pocket, a small weight that felt enormous. By the time she clocked out at 2 a.m., her feet were bleeding inside her shoes and every muscle in her body ached. She changed in the staff locker room, pulling on jeans and a sweater that had seen better days, and stepped out into the November cold. The subway ride to her studio in Queens took 40 minutes. She shared the car with a sleeping homeless man and 2 drunk college kids who couldn't keep their hands off each other. Normal. Real. The opposite of crystal chandeliers and men who saw through armor. Her apartment was a 5th-floor walk-up in a building that smelled like someone's failed cooking experiments. 400 square feet of peeling paint and pipes that groaned when she ran hot water. But it was hers. She'd signed the lease in her own name, paid the deposit with money she'd earned, and nobody could take it from her. Small victories. Lena kicked off her shoes, wincing as her feet hit the cold floor, and collapsed onto her second-hand couch. The card sat on her coffee table where she'd dropped it. She stared at it while eating leftover Chinese food straight from the container. A choice, Adrian had said. But what kind of choice? And why her? She thought about the way he'd looked at her. Really looked like she was something worth seeing. When was the last time anyone had done that? When was the last time she'd felt like more than just space someone else occupied? Marcus had proposed on a Tuesday, right before she had to leave for work. He'd been distracted, checking his phone while he asked her to marry him. She'd said yes anyway, grateful to be chosen, grateful to matter to someone. She'd spent a decade making herself fit into his life, smaller, quieter, less demanding, until the day she came home early and realized she'd erased herself so completely that he'd stopped noticing she existed at all. Lena picked up the card. Just a number. 10 digits that represented what? Another man telling her what to do? Another situation where she'd have to fold herself into an impossible shape? Or something else entirely? Her phone sat on the table beside the card. She could call, or she could throw the card away and forget Adrian Morelli and his intense eyes and unsettling questions. She fell asleep on the couch without deciding. 3 days passed. Lana worked her shifts at the Ashford, back to the main ballroom, no more VIP lounge, and tried to forget the man in the corner chair. But the card stayed in her wallet, and she found herself taking it out at odd moments, waiting for the subway, standing in line for coffee, lying awake at 3 a.m. because the neighbors were fighting again. On the 4th day, her phone rang during her lunch break. Unknown number. Hello? Lena Carter? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes? Please hold for Mr. Morelli. Lena's heart kicked against her ribs. She almost hung up. Almost. But then that voice came through the line, controlled, precise, with that edge of command that made her spine straighten involuntarily. You didn't call. I didn't know I was supposed to. Lena stood from the bench where she'd been eating a sad sandwich, suddenly needing to move. How did you get my number? I asked. No apology. No explanation. Have dinner with me. Excuse me? Tonight. I'll send a car at 7. I don't... Lena stopped, frustration building. You can't just demand... I'm not demanding. I'm asking. A pause. But I'm asking in a way that makes it clear I don't ask often, and I don't take no easily. That's not asking. That's dinner, Lena. 2 hours. Conversation. If you hate every second, I'll never contact you again. His voice dropped slightly. But I don't think you'll hate it. She should say no, should tell this arrogant stranger to lose her number and forget she existed. Should go back to her safe, small life where nobody saw her and nobody could hurt her. Instead, she heard herself say, Where? Busk. The car arrived at exactly 7 p.m. Lena had changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on the only dress she owned that didn't look like it came from a clearance rack. Navy blue, simple, probably 5 years old. Her hand shook as she applied lipstick she never wore. This was insane. She was meeting a complete stranger for dinner based on a 5-minute conversation and a phone call. He could be anyone. A predator. A psychopath. The driver held open the door of a black sedan that probably cost more than her annual rent. Miss Carter? Too late to back out now. The restaurant was in Manhattan, in a neighborhood where buildings touched the sky and people who looked like her didn't exist except to serve people who looked like Adrian. The driver pulled up to an entrance with no sign, just a discreet door with a man in a suit standing guard. Ms. Carter, the guard said before she could introduce herself. Right this way. Inside was a different universe. Low lighting, live piano music, a handful of tables occupied by people who radiated money and power like heat. And in the corner, at a table that gave him a view of the entire room, Adrian Morelli stood as she approached. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray, no tie, top button undone. The effect was somehow more intimidating than full formal wear, like he was relaxed but could snap to lethal attention in a heartbeat. Lena. He moved around this table, and she realized with a start that he intended to pull out her chair. When was the last time anyone had done that? You look beautiful. I look tired. The words came out before she could stop them. Tired can be beautiful. It means you're fighting for something. He waited until she sat before returning to his own chair. What are you fighting for? Survival, mostly. A server appeared, silent, efficient, and placed menus in front of them. Lena glanced at hers and felt her stomach drop. No prices. That meant the prices were astronomical. Order anything you want, Adrian said quietly. Money isn't a concern. Easy to say when you have it. Fair point, he signaled the server. We'll start with the tasting menu and bring the Chateau Margaux. The server nodded and disappeared. Lena stared at Adrian across the table. You didn't ask what I wanted. Do you know what you want? The question felt loaded with more than menu selections. Lena set down her menu. Why am I here? Because I asked you to be. That's not an answer, isn't it? Adrian leaned back slightly. You interest me, Lena. That doesn't happen often. You don't know anything about me. I know you're wearing the same expression you wore at the gala. I know you flinch when people get too close. I know you watch exits like you're calculating escape routes. His gaze didn't waver. I know someone broke you, and you put yourself back together wrong on purpose. Because wrong feels safer than vulnerable. Lena's throat tightened. You have no right. To see you? To say it out loud? Adrian's voice remained calm, but something fierce flickered in his eyes. Maybe not, but somebody should. Somebody should look at you and acknowledge that you're not actually invisible. You just wish you were. Why do you care? Because I recognize it. He paused as the server returned with wine, going through the whole ritual of presentation and tasting. When they were alone again, Adrian continued. I spent years being invisible. Different circumstances, same result. And then I decided to stop hiding. What changed? I got tired of letting other people tell my story, so I started telling my own. He raised his glass slightly. To new stories. Lena picked up her own glass, the wine probably costing more than her weekly grocery budget. I don't even know what you do. Import-export, real estate, various business interests. The answer was smooth, practiced, also vague enough to mean absolutely nothing. That tells me nothing. I know. Adrian smiled, and it changed his entire face, softening the sharp edges, making him look almost approachable. Almost. What do you want to know? Everything? Nothing? Lena took a sip of wine. It tasted like money. This feels like a test I don't understand. It's not a test. It's a conversation between two people who've both learned to hide in plain sight. He set down his glass. Tell me about your ex-husband. The shift was so abrupt, Lena nearly choked. What? You mentioned fighting for survival. Divorces don't usually lead to serving jobs unless someone got cleaned out financially, and you have that particular brand of wariness that comes from trusting the wrong person. Adrian's expression didn't change, but his voice dropped. So tell me, what did he do? Lena should have told him to mind his own business, should have stood up and walked out. Instead, she found words spilling out like blood from a wound she'd thought had scabbed over. His name was Marcus. Investment banking. We met in college, got married at 24 because that's what you do when someone picks you. He wanted a wife who looked good at company events and didn't ask too many questions about late nights at the office. She stared at her wine. I was a high school English teacher. I loved it, but Marcus said it was embarrassing, that his colleagues' wives had real careers, so I made myself smaller, stopped talking about work, stopped having opinions about anything that mattered, became this decorative thing he kept around. Until I came home early one day and found him with his assistant. 23 years old, blonde, ambitious, everything I wasn't. The memory still stung, even months later. He didn't even have the decency to look ashamed, just annoyed that I'd interrupted. Adrian's expression hardened. What happened in the divorce? He had better lawyers, claimed I'd been unfaithful, which was a lie, but his lawyers made it look convincing. I got nothing. Lost the apartment, the savings, everything. Had to quit teaching mid-year because I couldn't make rent on that salary alone. So here I am, 32, broke, serving drinks to people who don't see me. She laughed, but it came out bitter. Living the dream. Silence stretched between them. Then Adrian spoke, his voice carrying an edge that made her skin prickle. What's his full name? Why? Because men like that shouldn't get to walk away clean. Lena looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means, Adrian said carefully, that I have resources, and I don't like bullies. I don't need you to fight my battles. I know, but what if I want to anyway? The first course arrived, something delicate and expensive that Lena barely tasted. She was too focused on the man across from her, trying to figure out who he really was beneath the expensive suits and careful control. Tell me about you, she said finally. Fair's fair. Adrian considered her for a long moment. What do you want to know? Start with why a man who clearly has money and power is interested in a broke server he met once. Because you're the first person in years who didn't want something from me. His answer was immediate, honest in a way that surprised her. Do you know what it's like to have people see you only as what you can give them? To be valued for your utility instead of your humanity? Actually, yes. Then you understand. Adrian reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she felt the heat of him. I saw you in that ballroom, Lena. Invisible in a room full of people who should have noticed you, and I thought, here's someone who knows what it costs to survive. That's a hell of a thing to build an attraction on. Who said anything about attraction? But his eyes held hers with an intensity that made the words a lie. Maybe I just wanted to have dinner with someone real. The conversation shifted after that. Lighter topics, easier ground. Adrian asked about her teaching, and she found herself talking about her students, the books she loved, the moments when a kid's face lit up because they finally understood why To Kill a Mockingbird mattered. He listened like her words were the most important thing in the world. When she asked about his work, his answers remained vague. Business deals, overseas contracts, the kind of corporate speak that meant everything and nothing. But he talked about buildings he owned, neighborhoods he was developing, projects that would change the city's skyline. You're being deliberately mysterious, Lena said as they finished dessert, something chocolate that melted on her tongue. Maybe. Adrian's smile was slight. Or maybe I'm just careful about who I trust. Do you trust me? I'm having dinner with you, aren't I? That's more trust than I've given anyone in a long time. The check never came. Adrian simply stood, helped her with her chair, and guided her toward the exit with a hand that barely touched her lower back but seared through the fabric of her dress. The car was waiting. The driver held the door. I'll take you home, Adrian said. You don't know where I live. Queens, 5th floor walk-up, building with the broken buzzer. At her shocked expression, he shrugged. I told you, I have resources. That's creepy. That's honest. Which would you prefer, pretty lies or uncomfortable truths? Lena didn't answer. She slid into the car and Adrian followed. The space suddenly felt smaller with both of them in it, the city lights sliding past the tinted windows like a dream she wasn't sure was real. This was... She trailed off, not sure how to finish. Unexpected? Terrifying. Good. Adrian turned to face her. If it wasn't terrifying, it wouldn't matter. What happens now? That depends on you. He reached into his jacket, and withdrew another card, this one with an address embossed in gold. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Come alone. What is this? An answer to the question you're afraid to ask, which is who I really am, what I really do, and what I'm really offering you. His expression was serious, all traces of charm stripped away. But you have to choose to see it, Lena. I won't drag you into my world. You have to walk in with your eyes open. The car pulled up to her building. Adrian didn't move to stop her as she reached for the door handle, but his voice caught her before she stepped out. One more thing. What? Your ex-husband, Marcus Morrison, investment banker at Whitmore and Associates. Adrian's tone went flat, dangerous. He's going to have a very bad week. Consider it a gift. Adrian, you deserve better than invisibility, Lena. Someone should have told you that a long time ago. He met her eyes. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. Choose. Lena stepped out into the cold night air, clutching the card like a lifeline or a curse. She didn't look back as the car pulled away, but she felt Adrian's gaze on her like a physical touch. Inside her apartment, she stared at the new card. An address in a part of Manhattan she'd never been to. No explanation, just coordinates and a time. A choice, he'd said. But what was she really choosing, and why did the thought of saying no feel like drowning? Her phone buzzed. A news alert. She clicked it absently, then froze. Investment banker Marcus Morrison, under investigation for securities fraud. Whitmore and Associates distance itself from former employee. The story was already breaking. Photos of Marcus being led from his office. Quotes from anonymous sources about financial irregularities going back years. His career imploding in real time. Adrian had done this. In less than 6 hours, Lena should have been horrified. Should have called someone. Done something. Instead, she felt a dark satisfaction curl in her chest. Marcus had taken everything from her. Now someone was taking everything from him. And the man who'd made it happen wanted her to walk into his world tomorrow night. Lena looked at the card again. At the address that represented a choice she didn't fully understand. At the precipice between her safe, small life and something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. Tomorrow, she would decide. Tonight, she let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Seen. Lena didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table drinking bad coffee and watching the news cycle devour Marcus Morrison's life with the efficiency of piranhas on a carcass. By 3 a.m., every major outlet had picked up the story. By 5, his face was plastered across financial networks with words like embezzlement and insider trading scrolling beneath in angry red text. Her phone kept buzzing. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Former friends from her marriage. People who'd sided with Marcus during the divorce, suddenly wanting to know if she'd known anything, if she'd been involved. She deleted them all without responding. At 7 a.m., she called in sick to the Ashford. Her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears, but Maria bought it without question. Probably thought she had the flu going around the staff. Not the truth? That she couldn't face a single person today. Couldn't paste on that professional smile and pretend her entire world wasn't tilting sideways. The card sat on her table. The address stared back at her like a dare. She should throw it away. Should forget Adrian Morelli and his dangerous eyes, and the casual way he'd destroyed a man's career overnight. Should go back to her safe, invisible existence where nobody noticed her and nobody could hurt her. Instead, at noon, she got in the shower. At 2, she went through her pathetic closet trying to find something appropriate for walking into a stranger's world. At 6, she was standing in front of her bathroom mirror, applying makeup with shaking hands, wondering what the hell she was doing. The card said 8 p.m. The address was in Tribeca, in one of those converted warehouse buildings that now housed Manhattan's elite. Lena took the subway because she couldn't afford an Uber, couldn't bring herself to ask Adrian to send another car. Some fragment of pride still clung to her bones. The building's entrance was unmarked except for a number. Sleek glass doors, a lobby that looked like something from an architecture magazine, security that eyed her worn coat with barely concealed skepticism. She gave Adrian's name and watched the guard's expression shift from dismissive to carefully neutral in the space of a heartbeat. "Penthouse, he's expecting you." The elevator required a key card the guard provided. It rose so smoothly, Lena barely felt the movement, just watched the floor numbers climb, 20, 30, 40. When the doors opened, they opened directly into an apartment that made her breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, exposed brick and polished concrete, art that was probably worth more than her entire existence. And Adrian, standing by those windows with his back to her, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline like he owned it, which, for all she knew, he did. "You came." He turned, and the city lights behind him made it hard to read his expression. "I almost didn't." Lena stepped out of the elevator, heard it close behind her with a soft hiss. Trapped. "What you did to Marcus was justice, not revenge." Adrian moved toward her with that controlled grace she was starting to recognize. Predatory. Deliberate. "The investigation is legitimate. I just made sure the right people started looking in the right places. You destroyed him in 6 hours. I exposed him in 6 hours. He destroyed himself years ago." Adrian stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could see the dark circles under his eyes. Evidence he hadn't slept either. "Does it bother you, what I did?" Lena opened her mouth to say yes, to claim some moral high ground, but the words that came out were, "No, it bothers me that it doesn't bother me." Something flickered in Adrian's expression. Approval, maybe, or recognition. "Come here. I want to show you something." He led her through the apartment, past a kitchen that looked like it had never been used, a living room with furniture too perfect to sit on, down a hallway lined with art she couldn't name but knew was expensive. They stopped at a closed door. "Before I open this," Adrian said quietly, "I need to know you understand something. What I'm about to show you, it changes things. You won't be able to unknow it. Won't be able to go back to seeing me as just some businessman who bought you dinner." His hand rested on the doorknob. "Last chance, Lena. You can leave right now. I'll call you a car, send you home, and we'll pretend this never happened." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "And if I stay? Then you see who I really am, and you decide if you can live with that." Lena thought about her apartment, about serving champagne to people who look through her, about Marcus and his perfect lies, and the decade she'd wasted making herself small enough to fit in his shadow, about invisibility and survival and the crushing weight of being nobody to everyone. "Open the door." Adrian studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. The door swung inward to reveal an office that was all dark wood and leather, dominated by a massive desk with multiple monitors. But it was the wall behind the desk that made Lena's breath stop. Maps. Dozens of them. Manhattan divided into colored sections. Photographs connected by red string like something from a crime thriller. Documents with official seals. And in the center of it all, an organizational chart that showed connections between names she recognized, politicians, businessmen, celebrities, and others she didn't. "What is this?" "My real business." Adrian moved to stand beside her, his attention on the wall. "I told you I do import-export. That's not technically a lie. I import information and export consequences." "You're going to have to be clearer than that." "I run an organization that operates in the spaces between legal and illegal. We control territory, manage interests, ensure certain people understand that there are rules in this city that matter more than laws." He glanced at her. "In your world, they'd call it organized crime. In mine, it's just how things work." Lena's stomach dropped. "You're a criminal." "I'm a businessman who operates outside certain regulatory frameworks." Adrian's tone remained calm. "But if that word makes you feel better, then yes. I'm a criminal, a very successful one." She should run. Should get back in that elevator and never look back. This was insane. This man had just admitted to being exactly the kind of person she should avoid. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want you walking into something blind. Because if this goes where I think it might go, you deserve to know what you're getting into." He turned to face her fully. "And because I'm tired of hiding from someone who might actually see me." "See you as what? A mobster? As someone who built something from nothing, who protects people who can't protect themselves, who understands that power isn't evil, it's how you use it that matters." Adrian's voice hardened slightly. "Your ex-husband used his power to destroy you, to grind you down until you forgot you were human. I use mine to make sure men like him face consequences." That's a convenient justification. It's the truth. But I won't pretend I'm some vigilante hero. I've hurt people who deserved it and some who probably didn't. I've made choices that keep me up at night. I've built an empire on fear and respect and the understanding that some rules matter more than others. He stepped closer. But I've never lied about what I am. And I'm not lying to you now. Lena's mind spun. She looked at the wall again, at the maps and connections and evidence of a life she couldn't begin to understand. What do you want from me? Honestly? I don't know yet. Adrian's expression softened fractionally. I know I can't stop thinking about you. Know that when I saw you in that ballroom, something shifted, like recognizing myself in someone else's eyes. He paused. I want to know what happens if we stop hiding, both of us. I'm not hiding from anything. Lena, you're hiding from everything. From people who might see you. From possibilities that might hurt. From the person you were before someone convinced you that small and safe was the same as happy. His voice dropped. I'm offering you a choice. Stay small. Stay safe. Go back to your invisible life, or what? Or step into the light with me. See where this goes. Risk being seen and being known, being vulnerable to someone who might actually matter. Adrian's gaze held hers. I can't promise it'll be easy. Can't promise you won't regret it, but I can promise you'll never be invisible again. The words hit like a physical blow. Lena felt tears prick her eyes, hated herself for it, blinked them back. You're asking me to what? Join your criminal organization? Become some kind of... I'm asking you to have dinner with me again. And then maybe breakfast. And then we'll see. He smiled slightly. I'm not asking you to be part of my business, Lena. I'm asking if you want to be part of my life. You don't know me. Then let me. The simplicity of it undid something in her chest. Let me know you. Let yourself know me. And if it doesn't work, if you decide I'm too dark or too damaged or too dangerous, then walk away. But at least give it a chance. Lena looked at the wall again, at the evidence of violence and power and a world she'd never imagined. Then she looked at Adrian, this complicated, dangerous man who'd seen through her armor in 5 minutes and hadn't looked away. I need a drink. Adrian's laugh was surprised, genuine. That I can handle. He led her back to the main room, to a bar cart that held bottles she couldn't pronounce. He poured whiskey, the same expensive brand from the hotel, and handed her a glass. They stood by those massive windows, the city spreading out beneath them like a living thing. Tell me about your organization, Lena said after a long silence. If I'm considering this, whatever this is, I need to understand. Adrian considered her, then nodded. My father built it. Started small. Protection, territory control, basic organized crime structures. But he was stupid about it, violent. Drew attention, got himself killed when I was 19. He took a drink. I inherited a mess, rivals moving in, cops sniffing around, everyone assuming the kid couldn't hold it together. But you did. I rebuilt it, smarter, quieter. We don't traffic in anything that hurts the vulnerable. No drugs in schools. No forced prostitution. None of the shit that destroys communities. We protect neighborhoods the cops ignore. Run businesses that employ people who can't get hired anywhere else because of records or circumstances. He gestured to the wall in the office. And we make sure people who abuse their power face consequences. Like Marcus. Like Marcus. Like the landlord who was running a sexual harassment ring in his buildings until we convinced him early retirement was a good idea. Like the CEO who was dumping toxic waste in the river until we made him understand that environmental regulations matter. Adrian's expression hardened. I'm not a hero, Lena, but I'm not a monster either. I'm something in between. Something complicated. Why me? The question burst out before she could stop it. You could have anyone. Someone from your world who understands this. Why some broke teacher serving drinks? Because everyone from my world wants something. Power, protection, a piece of what I've built. He set down his glass and turned to face her fully. You didn't even want to take my card. Didn't care who I was or what I could do for you. You just wanted to survive another shift and go home. His voice softened. Do you know how rare that is? To meet someone who doesn't see you as a resource to be exploited? I still don't understand what you want from me. I want you to stay, tonight, have dinner, talk. Let me show you that I'm more than just this. He gestured at the apartment, the city, the empire implicit in every expensive surface. Let me be human with someone who doesn't expect me to be anything else. Lena should have said no, should have finished her drink, thanked him for his honesty, and walked out before she got pulled into something she couldn't escape. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that mirrored her own, a hunger for connection that went deeper than physical. What's for dinner? Adrian's smile was slow, transformative. Whatever you want. I have a chef on call. Of course you do. But she was smiling too, despite everything, despite the maps and the confessions and the casual admission of organized crime. Something normal, pasta, wine, nothing that costs more than my rent. I'll see what I can do. Dinner appeared an hour later, delivered by a silent man in chef's whites who set up the table by the windows and disappeared without a word. It was pasta, perfectly cooked, sauce that tasted like someone's Italian grandmother had made it, and wine that probably violated Lena's rent rule, but she didn't ask. They talked about everything and nothing. Adrian asked about her teaching, and she found herself describing her students with a passion she'd forgotten she had. The kid who hated reading until she introduced him to graphic novels. The girl who wrote poetry in the margins of her homework. The class discussion about The Great Gatsby that had turned into a debate about whether second chances existed. Do they? Adrian asked. Exist, I mean. Second chances. I don't know. Ask me in a year. Will you still be here in a year? The question hung between them. Lena set down her fork. I don't know that either. I don't know what I'm doing here right now, honestly. This is insane. You're a criminal. You're a woman who's been invisible for too long, who's scared of being seen because being seen means being vulnerable, who's sitting in my apartment despite every rational instinct telling her to run because some part of her recognizes that maybe, this could be something real. Adrian leaned back. Am I wrong? You're arrogant. That's not a no. Lena laughed despite herself. No, it's not a no. She took a breath. But I need you to understand something. I can't just jump into this, can't just accept that you're a crime boss and be okay with it. I need time, space, to figure out if I can actually live with what you do. Fair enough. Adrian stood, moved to the window. The city lights cast shadows across his face. Take your time, but while you're thinking, know this. I meant what I said. You're not invisible to me, and I'm not going to pretend you are. What if I decide I can't do this? Then I'll let you go. But I'll make sure you're protected. Make sure Marcus or anyone else from your old life can't touch you. He glanced back at her. You think I'd bring you into my world just to abandon you if it doesn't work out? I don't know what to think. I don't know you. Then stay. Tonight. Tomorrow. However long it takes for you to decide. Adrian turned fully. I have guest rooms, a library full of books you'd probably love, a view that makes this whole fucked up city look almost beautiful. Stay and figure out if this is something you want. Adrian, no expectations, no pressure, just stay. His voice dropped. Let me take care of you for once. Let someone see you and not ask you to be smaller because of it. The words cracked something open in Lena's chest. When was the last time anyone had taken care of her? When was the last time someone had seen her needs before their own? One night, she heard herself say. I'll stay one night, but that's all I'm promising. One night is enough to start. He showed her to a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment, a bed that looked like clouds, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, windows that framed the city like art. There's clothes in the closet if you need them, toiletries in the bathroom. Anything you want, just ask. Adrian paused at the door. And Lena? Thank you. For staying. For giving this a chance. He left before she could respond. Lena stood in the center of the room, surrounded by luxury she couldn't comprehend, and tried to process the last 12 hours of her life. Yesterday, she'd been serving drinks and counting tips. Tonight, she was standing in a penthouse belonging to a man who'd just admitted to running a criminal empire. This was insane. But when she finally crawled into that impossible bed, wearing silk pajamas she'd found in the closet that fit her perfectly, which should have been creepy but somehow wasn't, she slept better than she had in months. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee, For a disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came crashing back. Adrian, the maps, the confession, the choice. Lena found a robe and followed the coffee smell to the kitchen. Adrian was already there, dressed in slacks and a white shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous than the suits. He was reading something on a tablet, a mug in his other hand. He looked up when she entered. "Morning." "Morning." Her voice came out rough. "Is that coffee?" "Fresh pot. Cups in the cabinet above." He gestured. "There's also breakfast. I wasn't sure what you liked, so I had them send options." Lena opened the refrigerator to find enough food to feed a small army. Fruit, pastries, eggs, bacon, things she couldn't even identify. "This is insane. This is Thursday. Normal people don't eat like this on Thursday." "Good thing I'm not normal." Adrian set down his tablet. "Sleep well?" "Better than I should have." Lena poured coffee, added cream, and leaned against the counter. "I dreamed about that wall. The maps." "Nightmares?" "More like puzzles, trying to figure out how all the pieces connect." She took a sip. "Tell me something. Those neighborhoods on your map, the ones in different colors, what do they mean?" Adrian studied her face. "You really want to know?" "I stayed, didn't I?" He stood, walked to the office, and returned with one of the maps. He spread it on the kitchen island. "Red is territory we control directly. Yellow is allied organizations. Blue is neutral ground. Gray is hostile." Lena leaned over the map. "There's a lot of gray. There are a lot of people who don't like that I changed how things work. My father's way was violent, territorial, old-school mob mentality. Mine is more corporate, more strategic." He pointed to a section in gray. "This is the Volkov family, Russian organized crime. They want what I have, and they're not subtle about it." "Are you in danger?" "Always, but I'm good at what I do." Adrian looked at her. "Does that scare you?" "Yes." Lena met his eyes. "But probably not for the reasons you think. I'm scared because I should want to run, and I don't. I'm scared because this should repulse me, and it doesn't. I'm scared because I spent a decade with a man who lied about everything, and here you are telling me the worst truths possible, and I'm still standing here drinking coffee in your kitchen. And I don't know what that says about me." Adrian moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. "It says you're tired of lies, even pretty ones. It says you'd rather have ugly truth than beautiful fiction." His hand came up, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "It says you're braver than you think." The touch sent electricity through her. Lena's breath caught. "Adrian, I know, too fast." He stepped back, giving her space. "I'm not good at slow, not good at careful, but I'll try. For you." "Why? Why does this matter so much?" "Because you matter. Because when I look at you, I see something I didn't think existed anymore." He paused. "Hope. Possibility. A future that doesn't look like everything behind me." Lena's phone buzzed in the guest room. She heard it even from the kitchen. Reality intruding. "I should check it. I'll be here." She retrieved her phone to find 17 missed calls and twice as many texts. From Maria at the Ashford, from numbers she didn't recognize, from her landlord. She scrolled through the texts, her stomach sinking with each one. Then she saw the news alert, her face, on tabloid websites, blurry photos from the restaurant, her and Adrian at dinner, him pulling out her chair, her laughing at something he'd said. Headlines that made her feel sick. Mystery woman dines with alleged crime boss. Who is Adrian Morelli's new girlfriend? Teacher turned trophy. Oh God. The phone slipped from her hands. Adrian was there instantly. He picked up the phone, read the screen, and his expression went cold. "I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this. How did they... Someone at the restaurant. Someone always talks." He pulled out his own phone, made a call. "Kill it. Everything. I don't care what it costs." A pause. "By noon. Make it disappear." He hung up. Lena stared at him. "You can do that?" "I can do a lot of things, including protecting you from this." Adrian's jaw tightened. "This is my fault. I should have been more careful. It's too late now. Everyone's seen it. My landlord, my boss." Lena's breath came faster. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to... Hey, look at me. Adrian's hands came to her shoulders, firm but gentle. Breathe. You're not losing anything. I'll handle it. You can't just handle everything. Watch me. He was already texting someone. Your landlord gets a check that covers 6 months' rent. Your boss gets a very generous donation to the hotel's charity foundation and forgets he ever saw those photos. Anyone who asks gets told you're consulting on a private project for my company. That's not... You can't just... I can and I will. This is what I do, Lena. I solve problems. He set down his phone and cupped her face with both hands. But you need to decide right now if you can live with that. With me using my resources to protect you. With me stepping in when things go wrong. Because I will do it, every time. And I won't apologize for it. Lena's heart hammered. This was everything she'd run from with Marcus. A man making decisions for her, controlling her life, removing her agency. Except Adrian was asking permission. Was telling her the truth instead of hiding behind pretty words. I need air. I need to think. The terrace. Through those doors. He released her, stepped back. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready. Lena walked through the glass doors onto a terrace that shouldn't exist this high up. The city spread out beneath her, morning sun turning windows to gold. She gripped the railing and tried to breathe through the panic. Her life was imploding. Again, photos of her were spreading across the internet. Her job was probably gone. Her anonymity was shattered. Because of him. Because she'd said yes to dinner. Because she'd been weak and lonely and desperate to be seen. But wasn't that what she'd wanted? To stop being invisible? To matter to someone? Lena closed her eyes and felt the wind on her face. When she opened them again, Adrian was standing in the doorway. Not approaching. Just there. Giving her space, but not abandoning her. Tell me something, she called out. That night at the hotel. Did you know this would happen? Did you plan? No. His answer was immediate. I saw you and I acted on impulse. First time in years I've done something without calculating every angle. He moved onto the terrace but kept his distance. I didn't plan for you to matter. Didn't plan to care what happened to you. But here we are. And now my life is a mess. Your life was already a mess. You were just better at hiding it. Adrian's voice was gentle but firm. This, the photos, the attention, I can make it go away. Can erase it like it never happened. Or you let it stand. Let people know you exist. That you're with me. That you matter to someone who matters. He finally closed the distance between them. I know that's terrifying. Know it makes you vulnerable in ways you've spent years avoiding. But hiding didn't make you happy, Lena. It just made you safe. Safe is good. Safe is survival. But you're not just surviving anymore, are you? She wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that safe was enough. That she didn't need more than invisibility and solitude. But standing on his terrace with the city at her feet and this dangerous, complicated man looking at her like she was the only person in the world, she couldn't make herself believe it. What happens now? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. That depends on what you want. I don't know what I want. Then stay until you figure it out. Adrian reached out, gave her the chance to pull away, then took her hand when she didn't. Stay and let me show you that not all powerful men are like your ex, that some of us actually see the people we claim to care about. Lena looked down at their joined hands. His was larger, scarred across the knuckles, rough in a way that suggested violence wasn't theoretical for him. Hers was small, soft, unmarked except by paper cuts from grading essays in another lifetime. They shouldn't fit, but they did. 1 week, she heard herself say. I'll stay 1 week, and if at the end of it I decide this is too much, too dangerous, then I let you go, with enough money to start fresh somewhere safe, and my protection for life. Adrian squeezed her hand gently. But I'm betting you won't want to leave. That's arrogant. That's hope. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something almost boyish. And I haven't let myself hope for anything in a very long time. Lena took a breath. 1 week, 7 days to figure out if she could live in this world. If she could be with a man who admitted to being a criminal, but somehow made her feel safer than anyone ever had. 7 days to decide if being seen was worth the risk of being destroyed. Okay, she said finally, 1 week, but I have rules. Name them. No more making my problems disappear without asking me first. No more surprise interventions. If something happens, you talk to me before you fix it. She held his gaze. I need to feel like I have some control over my own life. Done. What else? I need to understand your world, really understand it. No glossing over the dark parts. No protecting me from uncomfortable truths. Lena stepped closer. If I'm going to do this, I need to see all of it. Adrian's expression turned serious. You might not like everything you see. Probably not, but I'd rather know than wonder. She paused. And one more thing. At the end of the week, if I decide to stay, we do this right. No half measures, no keeping me separate from your life. I'm in completely or not at all. You don't know what you're asking for. Then show me. Lena's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. Show me your world, Adrian Morelli, and let me decide if I can survive in it. He studied her face for a long moment, something intense and unreadable flickering in his dark eyes. Then he nodded slowly. All right, 1 week. Full disclosure, no protection from the ugly parts. When do we start? Adrian's smile was sharp, dangerous. Tonight, there's a meeting with my lieutenants. Territory dispute that needs resolving. You want to see my world? That's where it starts. Lena's stomach dropped, but she nodded. Okay. You're sure about this? Once you step into that room, once those men know who you are, there's no going back. You become part of this whether you stay or leave. I'm sure. He pulled her closer, his free hand coming up to cup her face. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can I be both? Adrian laughed, a real laugh that cracked the careful control he wore like armor. Then his expression sobered, and he leaned down until his forehead rested against hers. Don't say I didn't warn you. I won't. They stood like that for a long moment, the city alive around them, the future uncertain and terrifying and somehow full of possibility. Lena closed her eyes and let herself feel it, the fear, the anticipation, the strange sense that her life was finally beginning after years of just existing. When Adrian pulled back, his eyes held a promise and a warning in equal measure. Tonight, then. Welcome to my world, Lena Carter. Try not to let it eat you alive. The hours before the meeting crawled by like years. Adrian disappeared into his office to handle what he vaguely described as preparations, leaving Lena alone in the penthouse with her spiraling thoughts and a wardrobe she hadn't asked for but apparently now owned. She found the closet in the guest room fully stocked, designer labels she recognized from magazine covers, sizes that fit her perfectly, styles that ranged from corporate to cocktail. It should have felt like a cage. Instead, it felt like someone had actually paid attention to who she was instead of who they wanted her to be. She chose black. Simple dress, nothing flashy, paired with heels that added 3 inches but wouldn't cripple her if she needed to run. The woman in the mirror looked like someone else, put together, confident, dangerous in a way Lena Carter from Queens had never been. You clean up well. Adrian's voice came from the doorway. She turned to find him leaning against the frame, dressed in all black himself. No tie. Gun visible in a shoulder holster that he made no attempt to hide. The sight of it made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. Is that necessary? She gestured at the weapon. Always. But especially tonight. He pushed off the frame and crossed to her. Last chance to change your mind. I'm not changing my mind. Then we need to establish some ground rules. Adrian's tone shifted into something more businesslike. You don't speak unless spoken to directly. You don't leave my side. You don't react to anything you see or hear, no matter how disturbing. And if I tell you to leave the room, you go immediately without questions. You're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. These men aren't your colleagues from the teacher's lounge. They're killers, Lena. Strategists. People who've built empires on blood and fear. His hands came to her shoulders. They'll test you, try to find weakness. You need to show them nothing. What if I can't do that? Then fake it. Fake it so well they believe you're exactly where you belong. He studied her face. Can you do that? Lena thought about all the times she'd smiled through Marcus's humiliations. All the time she'd served drinks to people who treated her like furniture. All the performances she'd given just to survive another day. I've been faking it my whole life. Good. Adrian's expression softened fractionally. But Lena, this isn't forever. Just tonight. Just long enough for them to see you as mine and understand that touching you means war. Yours, she repeated. Is that what I am? That's what they need to think you are. What you actually are. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. We're still figuring that out. A phone buzzed. Adrian checked it, his jaw tightening. Car's here. Time to go. The warehouse was in Red Hook, a part of Brooklyn Lena had only seen from subway windows. Industrial, isolated, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. The car pulled up to a loading dock where 3 men in dark suits stood smoking, their attention sharpening when Adrian's door opened. Boss? The tallest one nodded, his eyes sliding to Lena with undisguised curiosity. This her? Show some respect, Victor. Adrian's voice could have cut glass. He came around to Lena's door, opened it himself, and offered his hand. Gentlemen, this is Lena. You'll treat her accordingly. Lena stepped out, her heels clicking on concrete, and forced herself to meet Victor's stare without flinching. He was massive, 6'5" at least, built like he bench-pressed cars for fun, scar across his left cheek, eyes that had seen things that would make normal people run screaming. Pleasure, Victor said, though his tone suggested it was anything but. The warehouse interior was surprisingly clean. Concrete floors, exposed beams, lighting that cast harsh shadows. A conference table dominated the center of the space, surrounded by chairs occupied by men who all looked like variations of Victor. Hard, dangerous, watching. Adrian's hand settled on Lena's lower back, guiding her to a chair beside his at the head of the table. She sat, crossed her legs, and tried to look like this was normal, like she attended meetings with criminals every Thursday. Everyone's here, a man to Adrian's left said. Middle-aged, graying, wearing glasses that made him look more accountant than enforcer. We can start whenever you're ready. Michael? Adrian nodded to him, then scanned the table. For those who haven't met her yet, this is Lena. She's under my protection. That means she's untouchable. Clear? Murmurs of agreement. Some genuine, some with edges that suggested they were already calculating how to use her as leverage. Good. Now, let's talk about the Volkov situation. Adrian pulled out a tablet, pulled up a map. They've been pushing into our territory on the waterfront. 3 shipments intercepted in the last month. 2 of our crew hospitalized. This stops tonight. How? The question came from a younger man at the far end of the table. Tattoos visible up his neck, accent that placed him somewhere in Eastern Europe. Volkov has backing from the Bratva. We push back. We start a war we might not win. We don't push back. We eliminate the problem at its source. Adrian zoomed in on the map, highlighting a building near the docks. Volkov's running his operation out of this fish processing plant. Tomorrow night it burns. Electrical fire. Very tragic. No casualties because everyone will get a tip to evacuate 30 minutes before. You want to warn them? Victor's disbelief was palpable. I want to send a message without creating martyrs. Volkov loses his base of operations. We make it clear we could have killed them, but chose mercy. Chose strength and restraint. Adrian's gaze was ice. And if they don't take the hint, the next fire won't come with a warning. The men around the table exchanged glances. Lena watched the calculation happen in real time, weighing Adrian's plan against whatever alternatives they'd prefer. Violence, she realized. They wanted violence. Adrian was holding them back from something uglier. I still think we should hit them where it hurts, the tattooed man said. Make an example. Volkov himself, maybe. Or his second. And when the Bratva retaliates? When we've got Russian organized crime declaring open war on us? Adrian's voice stayed level. Think it through, Sergei. Strategy over impulse. That's how we've survived this long. Sergei's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, boss. The meeting devolved into logistics after that. Who would handle the fire? What cover story to feed to authorities? How to manage the inevitable media attention? Lena listened with growing horror as they discussed arson and intimidation, like it was just another business deal. Which, she supposed, it was. For them. Then Victor's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, his expression shifting. We've got a problem. What kind? Adrian's attention sharpened. Carlito just sent word. Marcus Morrison is outside your building, with reporters. Every eye in the room turned to Lena. She felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing, crushing the air from her lungs. Adrian's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. Reassurance or warning, she couldn't tell. Details, Adrian said quietly. Victor read from his phone. Says he's been trying to reach his ex-wife. Says he has information about her new relationship. Has photos from the restaurant. Claims you're some kind of criminal and she's in danger. He looked up. Press is eating it up. We've got vans from 3 networks already. Lena's stomach dropped. Marcus. Of course. Even in the middle of his own scandal, he found a way to make it about her. Found a way to drag her down with him. How did he even know where I live? She whispered. Doesn't matter. Adrian stood, his demeanor shifting into something colder, harder. Victor, pull the building's security footage. I want to know who talked. Michael, call our contacts at the networks. Kill the story. Sergey, take 4 men and escort Mr. Morrison somewhere quiet where we can have a conversation. How quiet? Sergey's smile was predatory. Quiet enough that he understands his continued health depends on him disappearing. Not quiet enough that we create another problem. Adrian's gaze was ice. Make it clear. He goes away, stays away, or things get very unpleasant very quickly. On it. Sergey stood, gestured to several other men who rose with him. They moved with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. Often. Lena's hands were shaking. She clasped them in her lap, tried to breathe through the rising panic. Marcus was here. Had followed her somehow, or figured it out, or... Lena! Adrian's voice cut through her spiral. Look at me. She did. His expression was controlled, but something fierce burned in his eyes. He can't touch you. Not anymore, not ever. Adrian's thumb traced over her knuckles. I'm going to handle this, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? What are you going to do to him? Nothing permanent, nothing that can't be explained away as an unfortunate accident resulting from his own poor choices. Adrian's smile was sharp enough to cut, but he needs to understand that you're not his to harass anymore, that trying to drag you into his mess is a mistake that comes with consequences. Adrian, you can't just... I can, and I will. He stood, still holding her hand, pulling her up with him. Victor, take Lena back to the penthouse. Stay with her until I return. Michael, you're with me. I'm not leaving you, Lena said before she could think better of it. The room went silent. Every man stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to amusement to something that might have been respect. Adrian's eyes widened fractionally. Lena, you said I needed to see your world. This is your world. You dealing with a problem. I want to see how you do it. Her voice was steadier than she felt. Besides, Marcus is my problem. I should be there when you handle it. Adrian studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. All right, but you stay in the car. You watch, you listen, but you don't interfere. Agreed? Agreed. The drive back to Manhattan was tense and silent. Lena sat beside Adrian in the back of the sedan, watching the city slide past while her mind raced. What was she doing? This was insane. She was about to watch Adrian Morelli, a crime boss, a man who'd admitted to hurting people, confront her ex-husband. She should be terrified. Should be planning her escape. Should be calling the police or running or doing literally anything except sitting calmly in a car driven by a man named Victor who probably had more guns than she had shoes. Instead, she felt a strange calm settling over her. Marcus had spent years making her small, making her afraid, making her believe she deserved whatever scraps of attention he threw her way. Now someone was about to teach him that actions had consequences, and she was going to watch. The building's underground garage was chaos. News vans couldn't access it, but Lena could see camera crews on the street level through the garage's entrance. Sergey and his team had already arrived, a black SUV idling near the elevator bank with its rear doors open. Inside the SUV, looking significantly less confident than the last time she'd seen him, sat Marcus Morrison. Adrian's car pulled up beside the SUV. He turned to Lena, his expression serious. Last chance. You can go upstairs right now. Victor will take you. I'm staying. Then remember, you don't react. Whatever he says, Whatever happens, you stay quiet and calm. Can you do that? Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. Adrian stepped out of the car. Lena watched through the tinted window as he approached the SUV, his posture relaxed, but his presence commanding. Sergei said something she couldn't hear, and Adrian nodded. Then he leaned into the SUV, speaking to Marcus in a voice too low for her to catch. Marcus's face, visible in the SUV's interior light, went from defiant to pale in the span of seconds. He shook his head, started to say something, but Adrian cut him off with a gesture. More words exchanged. Marcus slumped back against his seat, all the fight draining out of him like air from a punctured tire. Adrian straightened, turned, and walked back to his car. He slid in beside Lena, his expression unreadable. "What did you say to him?" she asked. "The truth. That he has two choices. Disappear quietly and live out his life in whatever hole he crawls into, or keep making noise and discover that his legal problems are just the beginning." Adrian's voice was flat. "I also mentioned that we have very detailed evidence of his embezzlement and his affairs, and his habit of doctoring financial records, all ready to be delivered to prosecutors if he doesn't behave. You're blackmailing him. I'm protecting you. There's a difference." Adrian caught her gaze. "He also won't be bothering you about the divorce settlement anymore. Turns out when faced with federal prison or signing papers, people become remarkably cooperative." Lena's breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means he's signing over his share of the apartment and the savings account and paying your legal fees from the divorce. Consider it compensation for a decade of emotional abuse and fraud." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "You deserve it, Lena. And now he knows he can't take anything else from you." She should protest, should claim she didn't want Marcus's money, didn't want anything from him. But the truth was different. The truth was she'd earned every cent through years of making herself smaller, quieter, less demanding, through a decade of being invisible so he could shine. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me yet. You still need to see the rest." Adrian gestured to Victor, who'd stepped out of their car. "Sergei's taking Morrison to make a very public apology about his false accusations. He's going to explain to those reporters that he was mistaken, that he was desperate for attention during his legal troubles, and that his ex-wife deserves to be left alone. And if he doesn't, he will. Because Sergei's very convincing. And because Morrison just watched security footage of himself accepting bribes from a Cayman Islands shell corporation, footage that doesn't actually exist but looks remarkably real." Adrian's smile was cold. Modern technology is amazing. Lena watched through the window as Sergei's team escorted Marcus toward the garage entrance. Even from here, she could see him rehearsing words, his lips moving soundlessly, preparing his performance, his capitulation. "I should feel bad for him," she said quietly. "But you don't." "No, I feel relieved, and that makes me feel like a terrible person." Adrian turned her face toward him with gentle fingers. "It makes you human. He hurt you, used you, discarded you when you stopped being convenient. Feeling relieved that he can't do that anymore isn't terrible. It's survival. Is this how it works in your world? Someone hurts you, you hurt them back?" "No. In my world, someone hurts you, I make sure they can't hurt anyone again. There's a difference between revenge and protection." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I'm not interested in making Morrison suffer. I'm interested in making sure he never has the power to touch you again." The distinction felt important, though Lena wasn't sure she entirely understood it. Before she could ask, her phone buzzed, a text from a number she didn't recognize. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please forgive me." "Bo." She showed it to Adrian. He glanced at it and nodded. "He's making his statement. Let's go upstairs. You don't need to see this part." They rode the elevator in silence. Lena's mind was spinning with everything that had happened in the last 3 hours. The meeting, the casual discussion of arson, Marcus showing up, Adrian handling it with the efficiency of someone who did this daily. Which, she supposed, he did. The penthouse felt like a sanctuary after the garage's chaos. Adrian poured them both drinks. Whiskey again, because apparently that's what you drank after threatening your girlfriend's ex-husband. Lena took hers and collapsed onto the couch. "That was a lot," Adrian finished. He sat beside her, close but not touching. "Too much?" "I don't know." Lena took a long drink, felt the burn settle into her chest. You just made my ex-husband apologize on camera. You threatened him with evidence that doesn't exist. You discussed burning down a building like it was nothing. She looked at him, and somehow I'm more bothered by the fact that I'm not bothered. What does that mean? It means Marcus spent years making me feel crazy for being upset about things that were clearly wrong, making me doubt my own reactions. And now I'm watching you do objectively terrible things, and all I can think is that at least you're honest about it. Her laugh came out brittle. What does that say about me? That you're tired of being gaslit, that you value truth over comfort. Adrian set down his glass. But I need you to understand something, Lena. What happened tonight, that was mild. That was me being restrained. If you're actually going to be in my life, you'll see worse, much worse. Like what? Like people getting hurt, like decisions that cost lives, like moments when I have to choose between being good and being effective. And I'll choose effective every time because that's what keeps the people I protect safe. His gaze was intense, unflinching. Can you live with that? Lena thought about her week so far. About going from invisible server to this, sitting in a penthouse, drinking expensive whiskey, fresh from watching a crime boss destroy her ex-husband's credibility with a few phone calls and some manufactured evidence. She thought about Marcus and his pretty lies, about colleagues who'd pitied her, about friends who'd drifted away because her sadness made them uncomfortable, about a decade of making herself smaller to fit someone else's idea of who she should be. Then she thought about Adrian, about the way he looked at her like she was real, about how he'd asked her permission even while admitting he'd use his power to protect her, about the strange safety she felt in his presence despite, or maybe because of, the danger he represented. I don't know, she said honestly, but I want to find out. Adrian's expression shifted into something she couldn't quite read. Relief, maybe. Or fear. The week isn't over yet. Still 4 more days for you to change your mind. I know. Lena set down her glass and turned to face him fully. Tell me something. That meeting tonight, you were holding those men back from something worse, weren't you? They wanted violence and you gave them strategy. How did you... I watched their faces. They looked disappointed when you suggested the warning. She paused. You're not like them, are you? I'm exactly like them. I just have better control. Adrian's jaw tightened. Don't romanticize this, Lena. Don't make me into some kind of noble gangster with a heart of gold. I've done things that would make you sick. We'll do them again if necessary. I'm not romanticizing anything. I'm just trying to understand who you are. She reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. You keep warning me away. Keep telling me how terrible you are. But your actions say something different. My actions serve my interests. Protecting you serves my interests because I want you around. His voice was harsh, defensive. Don't mistake pragmatism for virtue. What if I don't care about the distinction? The question hung between them. Adrian stared at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, you should care. You should run. This is your chance. I'm not running. Why not? Because for the first time in my life, someone sees me and doesn't ask me to be smaller because of it. Lena's voice cracked slightly. Because you're terrifying and dangerous and probably terrible for me, but at least you're real. At least you don't lie about what you are. Lena, at least when you look at me, I know you're actually seeing me. Not some idea of who I should be. Not some convenient accessory. Me, messy and broken and still figuring out who I am after years of being nobody. She tightened her grip on his hand. So no, I'm not running. Not yet. Adrian moved so fast she barely registered it. One moment they were sitting separate. The next his hands were framing her face and his mouth was on hers, fierce and desperate and nothing like the careful control he usually maintained. Lena gasped against his lips, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders. The kiss deepened, and she tasted whiskey and want and something that felt like relief, like he'd been holding himself back and finally stopped. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. This is a mistake. Probably. You're going to get hurt. Maybe. Lena's fingers threaded through his hair. But I'm tired of being safe. Tired of protecting myself from feeling anything real. I can't promise this ends well. I don't care. And she didn't. Somewhere between the ballroom and the penthouse, between invisibility and being seen, she'd stopped caring about guarantees, stopped needing to know the ending before she started the story. Adrian kissed her again, slower this time, almost tender. When he pulled back, his eyes held a vulnerability that cracked something open in her chest. 3 more days, he murmured. Stay 3 more days. Let me show you the rest. And if you still want this, want me, then we figure it out together. And if I don't, then I let you go. With everything I promised, protection, money, a clean start. His thumb traced her lower lip. But I really hope you don't. Lena's phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. She ignored it at first, but it kept buzzing, call after call. Adrian reached for it, glanced at the screen, and his expression went cold. Unknown number, multiple calls. He answered without asking permission. Who is this? Lena watched his face change, saw the shift from protective to lethal in the space of a heartbeat. He listened for 30 seconds, then ended the call without a word. What is it? Volkov, he has your address. Your schedule from the Ashford. Photos of you from the last month. Adrian was already texting someone, his fingers flying across the screen. He just made you a target. The fear that Lena had been holding at bay crashed over her like a wave. What does that mean? It means the Volkovs figured out the best way to hurt me is through you. It means they're going to use you as leverage unless I give them what they want. He stood, pacing. It means you're in danger, real danger. The kind my protection might not be enough to stop. So what do we do? Adrian stopped pacing, turned to face her. You have 2 options. I send you somewhere safe, out of the city, new identity, total protection, until this is resolved. Or you stay, and I show them what happens when someone threatens what's mine. His expression was deadly serious. But if you stay, Lena, you need to understand what that means. It means stepping fully into my world. It means accepting that danger is part of your life now. It means trusting me to keep you safe, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. Lena's hands were shaking again. She looked around the penthouse, this impossible space that had become familiar in just days. Looked at Adrian, this complicated man who turned her life upside down and somehow made her feel more alive than she had in years. Running meant safety, meant going back to invisibility, meant survival. Staying meant risk, meant being seen, meant living. I'm staying, she said. Adrian's eyes flashed with something fierce. You're sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. Lena stood, walked to him, and took his hands in hers. Show me what happens next. Show me how you fight. Show me who you really are when someone threatens the people you protect. This isn't a game, Lena. People might die. I know. She did. She finally understood what she'd signed up for. But I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting fear make my choices. She met his gaze. Whatever happens next, we face it together. That's what you offered, isn't it? A way in? Yes. Then I'm in. Lena's voice was steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. All the way. No more running, no more hiding. Show me your world, Adrian Morelli, and let's see if I can survive in it. Adrian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with enough force to steal her breath. Against her hair, he murmured, You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. Can I be both? His laugh was rough. Yeah, you can be both. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Tomorrow, then. We show Volkov what happens when he makes the mistake of threatening you. We show him that you're not a weakness to exploit. You're a line he should never have crossed. Lena nodded, her heart racing, her future uncertain, her choice made. She'd stepped into Adrian's world fully now. No going back. No safety net. Just the terrifying freedom of being seen, being known, and being willing to burn for it. Sleep didn't come. Lena lay in the guest room bed staring at the ceiling while the city hummed 40 floors below, her mind replaying Volkov's threat on an endless loop. Adrian had stationed 2 guards outside her door, silent men with earpieces and guns who nodded when she'd walked past them to get water at 2 a.m. Protection felt like surveillance, felt like a cage she'd walked into willingly. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the windows gold, she'd made peace with her choice. Or at least stopped second-guessing it long enough to get out of bed. Adrian was already awake. She found him in his office, surrounded by maps and documents, speaking rapid Russian into his phone. He looked like he hadn't slept either, shirt wrinkled, hair disheveled, coffee cup leaving rings on papers that probably cost someone their life to obtain. When he saw her, he ended the call mid-sentence. "You should be resting." "Couldn't?" Lena moved into the room, drawn to the organized chaos spread across every surface. "What's all this?" Volkov's operation, supply chains, safe houses, business fronts. Adrian gestured to a map covered in colored pins. "If he wants to make this a war, I need to know exactly where to strike." "And where's that?" Adrian looked at her for a long moment, clearly weighing how much to share. Then he sighed and pointed to a cluster of red pins near Brighton Beach. His legitimate businesses. Restaurants, a nightclub, some real estate. Nothing illegal, but all of it funding his actual operations. "You're going to destroy his legal income. I'm going to make him choose between protecting his public face and protecting his criminal enterprise. Can't do both effectively." Adrian's smile was cold. "And when he's spread thin trying to save everything, that's when we strike where it actually matters." Which is? His weapons pipeline. Volkov's main value to the Bratva is his ability to move illegal firearms through the port. Cut that off, and he becomes expendable to his bosses. They'll remove him themselves to protect the larger organization. Lena absorbed this, trying to reconcile the strategic brilliance with the casual brutality underlying it. "You're going to get him killed. I'm going to make him irrelevant. What his bosses do after that is their business." Adrian set down his coffee. "This is what I meant last night. This is the reality. I'm not just protecting you. I'm orchestrating someone's downfall because he had the audacity to threaten you. Should that bother me more than it does? Probably." He moved closer, cupped her face gently. "You're adapting faster than I expected. Not sure if that's impressive or terrifying. Can it be both?" His laugh was rough. "You keep saying that. You keep giving me situations where it applies." Lena covered his hands with hers. "What happens today?" "Today, you meet the rest of my world. Not just the lieutenants, the people I actually trust. My inner circle." Adrian's expression was serious. "They need to see you, need to understand that you're not just some passing interest, that protecting you is as important as protecting me. And if they don't accept me, they will. Because I'm making it clear that's the only option." He released her face but kept hold of one hand. "But I need you to understand something. These people, they're going to test you. Ask questions. Try to find weaknesses. It's not personal. It's survival. They need to know if you're going to get me killed." "Am I?" "Too soon to tell." But his smile softened the words. "Get dressed. We leave in an hour." The restaurant was in Little Italy, tucked between a bakery and a shop selling Italian imports. Unmarked door, windows covered with curtains that blocked any view inside. Victor was waiting when they arrived, along with two other men Lena didn't recognize. "They're already here," Victor said, "waiting upstairs." Adrian nodded and led Lena through the restaurant, closed for business despite the lunch hour, and up a narrow staircase to a private dining room. The space was warm, intimate, lit by candles despite the daylight outside. And seated around a table that could fit 12 were 5 people who all turned to study Lena with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. "Everyone," Adrian said, his hand steady on Lena's back. "This is Lena Carter. Lena, meet my family." The word hit her unexpectedly. Family. Not crew. Not organization. Family. A woman stood first, 40-something, elegant in a way that spoke of old money, dark hair pulled back severely. "Sofia Castellano. I handle Adrian's legal businesses." Her handshake was firm, assessing. "The ones the IRS knows about, anyway." "Nice to meet you." Lena's voice came out steadier than she felt. Next was an older man, silver-haired and distinguished. "Robert Chen, Financial Operations. I make sure our money stays clean." His smile was kind, but his eyes were calculating, or at least appears clean enough to pass inspection. A younger woman, maybe Lena's age, with bright red hair and a nose ring. "Casey Murphy, Tech and Intelligence. I know everything about everyone," she grinned, "including you, Lena Carter. Former teacher, messy divorce, Excellent taste in literature based on your social media history. You looked me up. Of course I did. It's literally my job. Casey's grin widened. Don't worry, your internet history is boring. Lots of recipe blogs and one regrettable Etsy purchase last Christmas. Despite herself, Lena laughed. The ceramic owl was a gift. Sure it was. The last two were men, both younger than Adrian, both watching Lena like she was a bomb that might explode. The stockier one spoke first. Marco Salvatore, Security and Operations. I keep the boss alive. Doing a great job so far, Adrian said dryly. You're welcome. Marco's attention shifted back to Lena. You know what you're getting into here? I'm starting to. The final man stood slowly. He was lean, dressed impeccably, with a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. Dmitry Petrov. I handle problems that require permanent solutions. His accent was thick, Russian. I am also the one who will end you if you betray Adrian, just so we understand each other. The room went silent. Lena felt Adrian tense beside her, but she held Dmitry's gaze without flinching. Then I guess I better not betray him. Dmitry's smile was slow, predatory. Then he laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise everyone. I like her. She has spine. Sit down, Dmitry. You're scaring her. Sophia gestured to the empty chairs. Please, both of you, we ordered lunch. The meal that followed was surreal. Lena sat at a table with criminals discussing territory disputes and money laundering over pasta and wine like it was just another family dinner. Sophia talked about a legal case involving a nightclub. Robert detailed a complex scheme to move money through 3 countries and 5 shell corporations. Casey showed off surveillance footage from a competitor's warehouse. And through it all, they watched Lena, testing her reactions, seeing if she'd flinch. She didn't, or at least she hid it well enough that they seemed satisfied. So, Casey said eventually, pointing her fork at Lena, how'd you two actually meet? The real story, not whatever Adrian's been telling people. Lena glanced at Adrian, who nodded permission. I was serving drinks at a hotel gala. He was in the VIP lounge. We talked. That's it? You talked? He saw through my bullshit, called me out on hiding from my own life. Lena took a sip of wine. Then he gave me his number and destroyed my ex-husband's career inside of 6 hours. Romantic, Sophia said dryly. It was, actually. Lena met her eyes. Nobody had bothered to really see me in years. Adrian looked at me like I was real, like I mattered. That's more than anyone else had given me. And now you're here, in this life. Marco's tone was skeptical. Just like that. No questions, no concerns about what we do? Oh, I have concerns, lots of them. Lena set down her glass. But I had concerns about my old life, too. About being invisible, about surviving instead of living. About spending another decade making myself smaller for people who didn't value me anyway. She paused. At least here, people are honest about the danger. Fair point, Robert said quietly. Dmitry leaned back in his chair. And Volkov? You understand he will try to use you against Adrian, will hurt you to make a point. I understand. And you stay anyway. I stay anyway. Lena's voice was firm. I'm not leaving because some Russian gangster thinks I'm an easy target. The table erupted in laughter. Genuine, surprised. Even Adrian cracked a smile. I really do like her, Dmitry said to Adrian. She stays. Wasn't asking your permission, Adrian replied, but his tone was warm. The conversation shifted after that. They asked Lena about teaching, about her favorite books, about what she thought of the city. Normal questions that felt bizarre coming from people who'd just admitted to various felonies. But there was a warmth to it, too. An inclusion that made her feel less like an outsider and more like someone they were willing to protect. Then Casey's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression changed. Adrian, we've got movement. Everyone's attention sharpened. Adrian took the phone, scanned whatever message had come through, and his jaw tightened. Volkov's making his move faster than I expected. He hit one of our warehouses, took out 3 guards, burned the inventory. Casualties? Marco was already standing. 2 injured, 1 critical. Dmitry, get a team to the hospital. Make sure our people are protected and the staff keeps quiet. Adrian's voice was ice. Sophia, call our contacts at the police. Make sure this gets classified as gang violence. Jurisdiction stays with organized crime unit, not homicide. On it. Sophia was already dialing. Adrian turned to Robert. Move the emergency funds. If Volkov knows about the warehouse, he might know about other locations. Secure everything. Done. Casey was typing furiously on her phone. I'm pulling security footage from the area. Might be able to EID who did this. Good. Adrian's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezed once. Marco, get Lena back to the penthouse. Full security detail. No. Lena's voice cut through the organized chaos. I'm not hiding while you handle this. Lena, this isn't negotiable. Volkov just escalated. He's going to be watching for retaliation. I need you somewhere safe. And I need to understand what happens next. You promised me full disclosure. No protection from the ugly parts. She met his gaze steadily. This is an ugly part. I want to see it. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue. Around the table, his inner circle watched with varying expressions. Sophia amused, Marco concerned, Dmitri approving, Casey fascinated, Robert carefully neutral. She's right, Dmitri said. You promised transparency. Can't pull back now just because it got real. This isn't a game, Dmitri. Never said it was. But she's proven she can handle herself. Let her see what she's choosing. Dmitri's expression was serious. Besides, keeping her close might be safer than leaving her somewhere Volkov could reach. Adrian's jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. Fine, but you don't leave my sight, and if I tell you to go, you go immediately. Clear? Clear. The hospital was chaos controlled by money and fear. Adrian walked in like he owned it, which Lena learned from Marco's quiet commentary he partially did through a series of shell corporations and board appointments. They were ushered to a private wing where two of Adrian's men lay in bed surrounded by security. The injured men were young, mid-20s maybe. One had burns across his arms and chest. The other had been shot twice, once in the shoulder and once in the leg. Both looked terrified when Adrian entered, like being alive to face him was worse than what Volkov had done. Tell me what happened. Adrian's voice was controlled, but Lena heard the fury underneath. The burned one, Tommy, she learned, spoke first. They hit us fast. 10 guys, maybe more. Professionals. We tried to hold them off, but they had explosives. Marcus went down first, then Leo. His voice broke. Boss, we tried. I know you did. Adrian's hand landed on Tommy's unburned shoulder. You're alive. That's what matters. Leo? Surgery. Marco checked his phone. Touch and go. Bullet nicked his femoral artery. Adrian's expression didn't change, but Lena saw his hands clench. Get the best vascular surgeon in the city. I don't care what it costs. Leo doesn't die because Volkov wants to make a point. Already on it, Sophia said from the doorway. They stayed until the surgeon arrived, a tired-looking woman who took one look at Adrian and nodded her understanding of the situation. Then they left, piling back into the cars waiting outside. Lena expected them to return to the penthouse. Instead, Adrian directed the driver to Brooklyn. Where are we going? To send a message. Adrian's voice was flat. Volkov thinks burning a warehouse makes him powerful. Time to show him what actual power looks like. They pulled up to a Russian restaurant in Brighton Beach, one of the locations marked on Adrian's map. The place was open, midday crowd enjoying lunch. Adrian walked in, flanked by Dmitri and Marco, with Lena trailing behind against every survival instinct she had. The restaurant went silent. Patrons stared. Staff froze. And from a back table a man stood, mid-50s, barrel-chested, with cold eyes that found Adrian and held. Morelli. The name was accented, dripping with contempt. You are not welcome here. That's unfortunate, Alexei, since I just became very interested in this establishment. Adrian's smile was sharp. Health code violations are terrible for business. Would be a shame if the city found reasons to shut you down pending investigation. You threaten me? Alexei's hand moved toward his jacket. I'm informing you. There's a difference. Adrian didn't move, didn't tense, but Lena felt the violence coiled in him. Your boss made a mistake today. Hurt my people. Destroyed my property. That requires a response. Then respond. Start war. See how it ends for you. I don't want war, Alexei. I want compliance. Tell Volkov that every time he touches what's mine, I'll take something of his. Starting with this restaurant, then the nightclub, then his real estate holdings, then his shipping connections. Adrian took a step forward. Or he can accept that threatening my people was a mistake and withdraw from the territories he's been testing. His choice. He will never back down. Then he'll lose everything. Adrian's voice dropped. And you'll go down with him. Because I promise you, when I'm done, there won't be enough left of his organization for the Bratva to bother protecting. They'll cut him loose to save themselves. And then who protects you? The question hung in the air. Lena watched Alexei's face change as he calculated the angles, weighed his loyalty against his survival. Around the restaurant, other men were standing. Volkov's people, she realized. At least a dozen. They were outnumbered, badly. Marco's hand moved to his jacket. Dmitri shifted his weight, ready. Adrian stood perfectly still, a predator who knew he didn't need to move to win this confrontation. This is not over, Alexei said finally. No, but it's going to end the way I want it to. The question is how much you lose before you figure that out. Adrian turned to leave, his hand finding Lena's and pulling her with him. You have 24 hours. After that, the health department gets an anonymous tip about rodent infestation, and that's just the beginning. They walked out slowly, deliberately. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, certain that bullets would follow them through the door. But they made it to the car, made it inside, made it away before her legs gave out. What the hell was that? Her voice came out shaky. A negotiation. Adrian's adrenaline was fading. She could see it in the way his shoulders dropped. Alexei's smart. He'll tell Volkov that continuing this fight will cost more than it's worth. And if Volkov doesn't listen, then we escalate. But I'm betting he will. The Bratva doesn't tolerate members who create expensive problems. Adrian pulled her close. You okay? I think so. Lena's hands were trembling. There were at least 12 of them. We were outnumbered. I know. Adrian kissed her forehead. But numbers don't matter when the other side knows you're willing to burn everything down. That's what Alexei saw. That I'll destroy Volkov's entire operation before I let him think he can touch you without consequences. You're insane. Probably. His smile was tired. But I'm insane in a way that keeps the people I care about alive. The drive back to Manhattan felt longer than it was. Lena watched the city slide past and tried to process everything she'd witnessed. The hospital, the confrontation, the casual way Adrian had threatened to destroy someone's livelihood like it was nothing. This was his world. This was what she'd said yes to. Back at the penthouse, the inner circle reconvened. Casey had footage from the warehouse attack, grainy but clear enough to identify faces. Dmitri knew 3 of them, confirmed they were Volkov's top enforcers. Sophia reported that the police had taken statements and closed the case as gang-related, no further investigation planned. And through it all, Adrian orchestrated responses with the precision of a general commanding troops. Move this asset here. Protect that location. Increase security on these people. Every decision calculated, every action part of a larger strategy Lena was only beginning to understand. We hit them tonight, Adrian said finally. The weapons shipment coming through Port Newark. Casey, I need exact timing and location. Dmitri, assemble a team. Marco, coordinate with our contacts at the Port Authority. Make sure they're looking the other way. What about Volkov himself? Dmitri asked. He'll be at his nightclub, always is on Friday nights. Visible, surrounded by people, playing the legitimate businessman. Adrian's expression was cold. We leave him alone. For now. Taking out his shipment is enough to make the point without triggering a war we can't control. Plans solidified. People dispersed to handle their assignments. Within an hour, the penthouse was quiet again. Just Lena and Adrian and the weight of what was coming. You should eat something, Adrian said, but he didn't move toward the kitchen. Not hungry. Me either. He sank onto the couch, exhaustion finally showing. You can still leave, before this gets worse. Lena sat beside him. Do you want me to leave? No, but what I want and what's good for you might be different things. Let me worry about what's good for me. She took his hand, threaded their fingers together. Tell me something. That man at the hospital. Leo. Is he going to make it? I don't know. The surgeon's good, but Adrian's voice roughened. He's 24. Joined my crew 3 years ago because his family needed money and I pay better than legitimate jobs. Good kid, loyal, and now he might die because Volkov wanted to send me a message. That's not your fault, isn't it? He works for me, takes risks for me, gets shot because someone wants to hurt me. Adrian pulled his hand free, stood, paced to the window. This is what I meant, Lena. People get hurt. Good people. People who don't deserve it. And I'm the reason. Lena followed him, wrapped her arms around him from behind. You're also the reason they have jobs, have protection, have someone who actually gives a damn whether they live or die. She felt him tense, then slowly relax into her embrace. That man at the hospital, Tommy. He wasn't scared of you being angry about the warehouse. He was scared of disappointing you. That's not fear. That's loyalty. Loyalty gets people killed. So does indifference. At least loyalty means something. Lena rested her cheek against his back. You can't control everything, can't protect everyone from every danger, but you try, and that matters. Adrian turned in her arms, his expression raw. What if I can't protect you? Then we deal with it together. Lena reached up, cupped his face. I'm not some fragile thing that'll shatter the first time things get hard. I survived, Marcus. I survived losing everything. I can survive this too. This is different. I know, but I'm still here, still choosing this, still choosing you. She pulled him down until their foreheads touched. So stop trying to scare me away and let me be here, really here, for whatever comes next. Adrian's kiss was desperate, almost bruising. Lena kissed him back with equal intensity, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were dark with want and fear, and something that looked like hope. I'm going to hurt you, he whispered. Probably. But I'd rather be hurt by something real than safe in something hollow. Lena's smile was sad. I spent too long being protected from feeling anything. I'm done with that. They made it to his bedroom this time, not the guest room. The bed was massive, the sheets expensive, the view of the city even more spectacular from this height. Adrian undressed her slowly, reverently, like she was something precious he was afraid to break. Lena returned the favor, mapping the scars on his body with gentle fingers, knife wound on his ribs, bullet graze on his shoulder, smaller marks she couldn't identify but understood meant violence. They came together with an urgency that bordered on desperation, two people trying to prove something to themselves or each other or the universe. That they were real. That this mattered. That choosing each other wasn't the worst decision either of them had ever made. After, lying tangled in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Lena traced patterns on Adrian's chest and tried to ignore the fear coiled in her stomach. What are you thinking? His voice was rough, satisfied. That I crossed a line tonight. That I can't go back to who I was before. She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. That terrifies me almost as much as it excites me. You can always go back. I meant what I said. I don't want to go back. Lena's voice was firm. I want to go forward, with you, into whatever mess this becomes. She paused. Is that insane? Completely. Adrian's smile was soft, but I'm grateful for it anyway. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. You should check that, Lena said. Adrian sighed, reached for it, and his expression changed. It's the hospital. Leo's out of surgery. And? He's going to make it. Stable condition. Full recovery expected. Relief washed over Adrian's face. He's going to be okay. Lena felt something in her chest loosen. That's good. Yeah. Adrian pulled her close again. One less death on my conscience tonight. They lay like that while the city darkened outside, the skyline lighting up with a million stories they'd never know. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation with Volkov's shipment, the escalation Adrian had promised, the consequences of choices they'd both made. But tonight, in this moment, there was just the two of them, two damaged people choosing each other despite every rational reason not to. Lena drifted towards sleep, thinking about lines crossed and futures uncertain and the strange peace she felt in Adrian's arms despite the danger pressing in from every side. She'd chosen visibility over safety, connection over comfort, truth over pretty lies. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt alive in a way that mattered more than being safe. Adrian's voice pulled her back from sleep's edge. Lena? Thank you for staying, for choosing this. His arms tightened around her, for seeing me and not running. Thank you for the same thing. She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. We're probably both idiots. Definitely. His laugh rumbled through his chest. But at least we're idiots together. Lena smiled against his skin and let herself fall asleep in a crime boss's arms, protected by men with guns, wrapped in a life she never could have imagined wanting. Tomorrow would bring violence and consequences and choices that would define who she was becoming. But tonight, she was exactly where she wanted to be. The call came at 4 a.m. Lena woke to Adrian already on his feet, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in clipped sentences she was too disoriented to follow. When he ended the call, his expression was grim. What happened? Volkov moved the shipment, changed the schedule, different route. Someone tipped him off. Adrian was already dressing, his movements sharp with controlled fury. We need to move. Now. Lena scrambled out of bed, reaching for clothes. What does that mean? It means we have about 90 minutes before 20 million in illegal weapons hits the city through a route we don't control. It means Volkov knows we're coming, and this just became significantly more dangerous. He strapped on his shoulder holster, checked the gun with practiced efficiency. It means you're staying here with Victor. Like hell I am. Adrian's gaze snapped to her. Lena, this isn't negotiable. If Volkov knows our plans, he might know other things. This could be a trap. Then you definitely shouldn't go alone. I won't be alone. I'll have Dmitri, Marco, and a dozen others. He crossed to her, hands framing her face. But I can't focus on the mission if I'm worried about keeping you safe. Please, stay here. Let me handle this. Every instinct screamed at her to argue, but she saw the fear beneath his control, understood that this was different from the confrontation she'd witnessed. This was active combat, the kind where people died. Okay, she said finally, but you come back. You don't get to make me care about you and then die on some dock somewhere. Adrian's kiss was fierce and fast. I'll come back. I promise. He left with orders to Victor to lock down the penthouse, admit no one, and shoot first if anyone tried to breach security. Lena watched from the windows as his car disappeared into pre-dawn Manhattan, then paced the apartment like a caged animal, while Victor stood silent guard by the elevator. The next 2 hours were the longest of her life. She tried reading, couldn't focus, tried sleeping, gave up after 10 minutes of staring at the ceiling, finally settled on the couch with coffee that tasted like anxiety and waited for her phone to ring with news she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. When the call finally came, it wasn't Adrian. It was Casey. Turn on the news, Channel 7. Lena grabbed the remote, her hand shaking. The screen lit up with a reporter standing outside Port Newark, emergency lights flashing behind her. The headline scrolling beneath made Lena's stomach drop. Major drug bust at Port Newark. Authorities seize millions in illegal weapons. What? Lena started, but Casey cut her off. Keep watching. The reporter was interviewing a police captain who looked far too pleased with himself. He talked about anonymous tips, coordinated raids, a major victory against organized crime. The camera panned to show weapons being loaded into evidence trucks, dozens of police securing the scene. Adrian tipped them off, Casey said in her ear. Called in the shipment himself. Let the cops take the credit, take the weapons off the street. Volkov's out 20 million and facing major heat from his Bratva bosses for losing that much product. But won't they know Adrian? That's the beautiful part. Volkov can't prove anything. Adrian made sure the tip came through channels that look like internal police intelligence. Far as anyone knows, Volkov just got sloppy and law enforcement got lucky. Casey's satisfaction was audible. It's over, Lena. Volkov's done. His bosses will cut him loose rather than risk further exposure. Relief and disbelief warred in Lena's chest. Where's Adrian? On his way back to you. Should be there in 20 minutes. A pause. He did good tonight. Chose the smart play over the violent one. That's growth. After Casey hung up, Lena stayed glued to the news coverage. More details emerged. The weapons had been traced to Russian suppliers. Investigations were ongoing, multiple arrests expected. The reporter speculated about gang warfare and territory disputes without knowing she was reporting the exact outcome Adrian had orchestrated. When the elevator finally opened and Adrian walked out, looking exhausted but whole, Lena flew across the room and wrapped herself around him hard enough to make him stagger. Easy, I'm okay. His arms came around her, solid and real. You gave them to the police, the weapons. Couldn't think of a better way to hurt Volkov without starting a war I'd have to finish. Adrian pulled back to look at her. This way he loses everything, his product, his reputation, his value to the Bratva. And I get to keep my people alive. That was, Lena searched for words, strategic, restrained. Don't sound so surprised. I'm capable of thinking past immediate violence. But his smile was tired. Sometimes. Victor cleared his throat from across the room. Boss, Dmitri just confirmed. Volkov's been recalled to Moscow. His operation here is being absorbed by another family. He's out. Adrian nodded slowly. And our territories? Secure. No pushback from the new leadership. They're making it clear they don't want conflict, just want to operate their businesses quietly. Good. Adrian's shoulders finally relaxed. Tell everyone to stand down. Return to normal operations. This crisis is over. Victor left. Lena guided Adrian to the couch, pushed him down, and curled against his side. They sat in silence while dawn broke properly over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that seemed impossible after the darkness of the night. I thought you were going to come back different, Lena said quietly, changed by whatever happened out there. Maybe I did. Maybe I changed months ago when I saw you in that ballroom and decided I was tired of being alone. Adrian's fingers traced patterns on her arm. You make me want to be smarter, less reactive, the kind of man who solves problems without creating bigger ones. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone you've known a week. Has it only been a week? Adrian's laugh was soft. Feels longer. Much longer. Lena shifted to look at him properly. What happens now? Now? Now we figure out what this is, what we are. His expression turned serious. Your week is up, Lena. You've seen my world, the good, the bad, and the actively criminal. So I'm asking, do you stay? The question hung between them, weighted with everything they'd been through. Lena thought about the ballroom where this started, about invisibility and survival, and the person she'd been before Adrian Morelli looked at her like she mattered. She thought about the risks and the danger and the casual violence that came with his world. Then she thought about being seen, about waking up in his arms, about feeling alive for the first time in years. I'm staying, she said, but we need to establish some things. Name them. I'm not going to be some kept woman who sits around waiting for you to come home. I need purpose, work, something that's mine. Lena sat up fully. I want to go back to teaching. Maybe not full-time, maybe not at a traditional school, but I need to do something meaningful. Adrian considered this. I can make that happen. We fund several after-school programs in neighborhoods that need them. You could run one, build curriculum, actually help kids who need it. Without criminal involvement, the programs are legitimate, funded through my legal businesses, completely above board. Sophia handles the paperwork. You'd be clean. He paused. Though the kids we serve come from families involved in various enterprises. Can you handle that? As long as I'm not teaching them how to launder money, I think I'll manage. Lena's smile was slight. What else? What else what? What else do you need from me? From this relationship? She held his gaze. You've given me so much already. Protected me, freed me from Marcus, offered me a future. What do you actually want in return? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I want what we had last night. Someone to come home to who sees all of me and doesn't run. Someone who challenges me to be better. Someone who... He stopped, struggling with words. Someone who makes this life feel like more than just survival and strategy. I can do that. Lena took his hands. But you have to let me in, really in. No more protecting me from ugly truths. No more making decisions for me without asking. We're partners or we're nothing. Partners. Adrian tested the word. I've never had one of those before. Then we'll figure it out together. She leaned in, kissed him softly. One crisis at a time. The days that followed were strange and almost normal. Volkov's organization dissolved. The new Russian leadership reached out to Adrian to establish peaceful coexistence, and the immediate danger faded like smoke. Marcus signed the divorce papers without argument, transferring assets that gave Lena financial stability she'd never had. The tabloid photos disappeared from the internet as thoroughly as they'd appeared, and Lena started building a life. She met with Sophia about the after-school program, a community center in the Bronx that served kids from families the system had failed. The space was shabby but hopeful, staffed by people who actually cared. Lena dove into creating curriculum, recruiting volunteers, finding funding for books and supplies that schools couldn't provide. Adrian's inner circle became her friends. Casey taught her basic digital security so her online presence couldn't be weaponized. Sophia explained the legal structures that kept Adrian's empire functioning. Marco showed her basic self-defense because, as he put it, boss's girl needs to know how to handle herself. Even Dmitri warmed to her in his own terrifying way. He'd shown up at the community center one day with a trunk full of books, Russian classics in English translation, and told her, "Smart kids should read smart books, not American garbage." But Lena had accepted the donation without pointing out that half of them were Dostoevsky and might traumatize the middle schoolers. 3 months in, she was leading a discussion about The Outsiders with a group of 8th graders when her phone buzzed. Adrian's text was simple. "Dinner tonight, my place, 7. Dress nice." She almost ignored the dress code, showed up in jeans just to make a point, but something in the message felt significant. So she went home to the penthouse. Her home now, officially. Her belongings moved in gradually until the guest room held nothing but memories of who she'd been before, and found a dress waiting on the bed. Deep blue, elegant without being showy, exactly her size. A note in Adrian's handwriting. "For tonight, if you want to wear it." Lena wore it. Adrian was waiting when she emerged, dressed in a suit that made him look dangerous and elegant in equal measure. But it was his expression that made her pause, nervous, almost vulnerable in a way she rarely saw. "You look beautiful," he said. "You look terrified. What's going on? Come here. I want to show you something." He led her to the terrace, the same space where she'd stood months ago trying to decide if she could live in his world. But tonight it was transformed. Candles everywhere, a table set for 2, the city spread out beneath them like a gift. "Adrian, this is—" "Wait." He pulled out her chair, waited until she sat, then retrieved a bottle of wine from somewhere, poured them both glasses with hands that trembled slightly. "I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond. Can you do that?" Lena's heart kicked against her ribs. "Okay." Adrian sat across from her, the candles casting shadows across his face. 3 months ago, I was surviving, running an organization, managing territories, solving problems. But I wasn't living, wasn't hoping for anything beyond tomorrow's crisis. He paused. Then I saw you, and something changed. "Adrian, let me finish." His smile was soft. "You've transformed everything. Made me want to be smarter, better, someone worthy of the way you look at me. You've given me a reason to solve problems without violence, to think about futures instead of just immediate survival." He reached into his jacket, and Lena's breath stopped. "I know this is fast. No, we've only had 3 months of actually being together. But I've spent my whole life calculating angles and managing risks, and this is the first time I've ever been certain about anything." He opened the small box to reveal a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the candlelight. "Marry me, Lena, not because it's strategic or smart or makes sense to anyone else. Marry me because you make me want to be human instead of just effective. Because you see all the broken parts and stay anyway. Because I love you more than I thought I was capable of loving anything." Lena stared at the ring, at Adrian's face, at the impossible future he was offering. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was too fast, too risky, too much. 3 months wasn't enough time to know someone well enough to marry them, especially when that someone ran a criminal empire and came with dangers she was still learning to navigate. But rationality had given her a decade with Marcus, had given her invisibility and survival and a life so small she'd nearly disappeared inside it. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I'll marry you." Adrian's relief was visible. He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that shook, then pulled her up and into a kiss that tasted like hope and fear. and promises neither of them knew if they could keep. "I'm going to try to be better," he said against her lips. "For you, for us. Don't be better. Be honest. Be real. Be the complicated mess you are." Lena pulled back to look at him. "I didn't fall in love with some sanitized version of you. I fell for the man who sees me completely and somehow loves me anyway. That's a low bar. Maybe, but it's mine." She kissed him again. "When? When what? When do you want to get married? Because if we're doing this, I don't want to wait. Don't want to give the universe time to change its mind." Adrian's laugh was surprised, delighted. "Next month. Small ceremony, just the people who matter." "Deal." They married 5 weeks later in the penthouse with only Adrian's inner circle as witnesses. No white dress, no traditional ceremony, just Lena in navy blue and Adrian in charcoal gray, exchanging vows they'd written themselves in front of the people who'd become her family. Sophia officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this. Casey cried and tried to hide it. Dmitri gave a toast in Russian that Marco quietly translated as, "May your enemies die screaming and your love outlast their empires." Robert presented them with a photo album of their first 3 months together, proof that Casey had been documenting everything. And Victor, standing guard by the elevator as always, cracked the smallest smile Lena had ever seen when she walked past him as Adrian's wife. The months that followed brought changes both subtle and significant. Lena's community center expanded, serving more kids, offering more programs. She hired 3 full-time teachers and established partnerships with local colleges for tutoring support. Adrian funded it all without question, took genuine interest in the kids' progress, even showed up occasionally to talk about business strategy in ways that made 9th graders actually pay attention. His empire evolved too. He shifted more operations into legitimate territory, using his connections and resources to build businesses that employed people who needed second chances. The criminal elements didn't disappear. He was still Adrian Morelli, still commanded respect through a combination of strategy and the implicit threat of violence. But the balance shifted towards something that let him sleep better at night. They fought sometimes, about his tendency to solve her problems without asking, about her stubborn refusal to accept protection she clearly needed, about the fundamental differences between someone raised in this world and someone still learning its rules. But they also learned each other, learned how to be partners instead of just lovers, learned that trust was something built daily, not given once and assumed forever. 6 months after the wedding, Lena was grading papers in Adrian's office when she found him staring at his maps with an expression she'd learned to recognize, planning something, working through angles. "What is it?" He glanced up, clearly debating whether to share, then sighed. "I'm considering getting out." "Out of what?" "All of it. The criminal operations, the territory management, the whole empire my father built." Adrian gestured at the maps. "Transitioning everything to legitimate businesses. It'll take years, maybe a decade. But I'm tired, Lena. Tired of looking over my shoulder. Tired of making decisions that cost lives." Lena set down her papers. "What changed?" "You did. You're carrying my child." He said it quietly, certainly, like he'd been waiting for the right moment to tell her. "I'm... what?" Lena's hand went to her stomach reflexively. "How do you know?" "You've been exhausted, nauseous in the mornings, avoiding coffee." Adrian's smile was soft. "And Casey may have mentioned she saw you buying a pregnancy test last week. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how you'd feel about it. I feel terrified and hopeful and determined to build something better than this." He moved to her, knelt beside her chair. "I don't want our child growing up in this world. Don't want them learning to calculate violence and manage territories. I want them to be normal, safe, free." Lena's eyes burned. "That's going to take time." "I know, but I'm good at long-term strategy." His hand covered hers on her stomach. "And for the first time in my life, I have something worth planning for that isn't just survival." They told the inner circle a week later. The reactions ranged from Sophia's practical questions about legal structures for succession to Casey's immediate creation of a private online baby registry, to Dmitri's solemn vow to teach the child proper Russian, to Marco's concern about security protocols for protecting a family. Robert just smiled and said, "About time this organization had something to celebrate besides successful violence." The pregnancy was complicated by Lena's anxiety and Adrian's overprotective tendencies, but they navigated it together. He came to every doctor's appointment, asked questions that made the obstetrician raise her eyebrows at how thoroughly he'd researched pregnancy, and renovated an entire wing of the penthouse into a nursery that looked like something from a magazine. Lena focused on her work, on the kids at the community center who needed her steady presence, on building a life that had meaning beyond survival. She was teaching a college prep class when her water broke 3 weeks early, and it was one of her students who called Adrian in a panic while another called 911. Adrian arrived at the hospital before the ambulance did, having apparently violated every traffic law in Manhattan to reach her. He held her hand through labor that lasted 14 hours, never left her side, and cried when their daughter was born screaming and perfect and impossibly small. They named her Elena, after Lena's mother who died when she was young. Elena Carter Morelli, born 7 pounds 3 ounces, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's stubborn expression. Adrian held her like she was made of glass and promises. "I'm going to build you a better world," he whispered. "I swear it." And slowly, carefully, he did. Over the next 2 years, he systematically dismantled the criminal elements of his empire, transferring operations to people he trusted, converting assets to legitimate businesses, creating employment opportunities in neighborhoods that needed them. It wasn't perfect. Some violence was unavoidable. Some debts had to be called in. Some enemies needed to be handled with finality. But the trajectory was clear. He was building something different, something that could survive scrutiny, something his daughter could be proud of instead of terrified by. Lena watched it happen while building her own legacy. Her community center became a model for other programs across the city. She wrote curriculum that other educators adopted. She gave speeches about reaching kids the system had failed, about second chances and seeing potential in places others ignored. And sometimes, when she stood in front of a classroom full of kids who reminded her of who she'd been, invisible, struggling, trying to survive, she thought about that night in the ballroom, about the moment Adrian Morelli had looked at her like she was real, like she mattered, like being seen was possible even when you'd spent years hiding. On their daughter's 2nd birthday, they threw a party at the community center. Not the penthouse, not somewhere exclusive. The center, surrounded by the kids Lena taught, and the families they served, and the friends who'd become family. Adrian stood with Elena on his hip, watching Lena organize relay races with the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime managing chaos. Casey was running the music. Dmitri was teaching kids inappropriate Russian folk songs. Marco was managing security from a discreet distance. And Sophia was discussing college admissions with parents who'd never imagined their kids might have that option. "You did this," Robert said, appearing at Adrian's elbow. "Built something worth protecting instead of just protecting what you'd built." "Lena did this. I just funded it." "You're being modest. Doesn't suit you." Robert's smile was knowing. "But you're right. She transformed everything. Made you want to be someone your daughter could admire." Adrian watched Lena laughing with a group of kids, her whole face lit up with genuine joy. "She transformed me. Made me believe I could be more than what my father built, more than just effective." "And? Are you?" "I'm trying. Every day. Still not sure I'm succeeding, but I'm trying." Adrian shifted Elena to his other hip. "That's got to count for something." "It counts for everything." The party stretched into evening. Someone brought a cake, someone else brought balloons, and Elena smeared frosting across her face with the dedication of someone who took birthday celebrations seriously. Lena caught Adrian's eye across the room and smiled, and he felt that same jolt he'd felt in the ballroom 3 years ago. Like being seen, like being known, like being chosen despite everything that made him unworthy of it. Later, after the party ended and the center was cleaned and Elena was asleep in her crib surrounded by too many new toys, Adrian and Lena stood on their terrace watching the city light up against the darkness. "Do you ever regret it?" Adrian asked quietly. "Saying yes that first night, staying when you should have run." Lena leaned into him, her hand finding his. "Every choice has consequences. Every path has costs. But regret? No. This life, messy and complicated and sometimes terrifying, it's mine in a way nothing else has ever been mine." She turned to look at him. "You gave me that. Gave me permission to be visible, to matter, to build something real instead of just surviving. I destroyed your quiet life. My quiet life was killing me, just slowly, invisibly. Lena's smile was soft. You didn't destroy anything worth keeping. You just showed me there was another option, a harder option maybe, but real. Adrian pulled her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and baby powder and the city beyond. I love you, more than I thought I was capable of loving anything. I know, you tell me every day. Because you need to hear it, because I spent too long not saying things that mattered. He kissed the top of her head. Because you're the best decision I ever made, and I want to make sure you never forget it. Not likely, you're pretty unforgettable. Lena pulled back to look at him. Though, if you keep buying Elena every toy she points at, we're going to need a bigger penthouse. I'm working on that, actually. Found a brownstone in Brooklyn. 5 bedrooms, backyard, near good schools. Adrian's expression was almost shy. Thought maybe we could raise her somewhere that feels less like a fortress. You want to leave the penthouse? I want to build a home. With you. With Elena. With whatever comes next. He paused. What do you think? Lena looked out at the city, at the life they'd built against every reasonable expectation. Looked at this man who'd terrified her and saved her and somehow become her home in ways that had nothing to do with addresses. I think we should look at the brownstone tomorrow, she said finally. I think we should keep building this messy, complicated, beautiful life we've created. I think, her voice caught, I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, finally, after years of being lost. Adrian kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promises they'd both learned to keep. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling despite the tears tracking down Lena's cheeks. No more invisibility, he said. No more hiding, she agreed. Just us, building something real. Just us. They stood on the terrace until the city lights blurred into stars, until the cold drove them inside, until Elena's cry pulled them back to the present and the future and the life they'd chosen together. And if either of them thought about the ballroom where this started, about the impossibility of this ending, about the 1,000 ways it could have gone differently, neither mentioned it. Some stories don't have perfect endings. Some transformations are messy and ongoing and never quite complete. But standing in their daughter's nursery, watching Adrian soothe Elena back to sleep with gentle words in Italian he'd learned from his grandmother, Lena felt something she'd never felt with Marcus, never felt in her old life. Peace. Not the peace of safety, not the peace of avoiding conflict, but the peace of being seen completely and choosing to stay anyway. The peace of building something real with someone real, complications and all. Adrian looked up, caught her watching, and smiled. What? Nothing. Everything. Lena moved to his side. Just thinking about how far we've come from that night. Which night? All of them. Every night that brought us here. She rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for seeing me, for making me visible when I'd forgotten I could be. Thank you for staying, for making this life worth protecting instead of just surviving. Adrian's free arm wrapped around her, for making me believe I could be more than what I was. Elena made a small sound, already drifting back to sleep. They stood there, the 3 of them, bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight shaped like stars. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent to their story. Inside, they'd built something that mattered. Not perfect, not safe, not simple, but real, and visible, and theirs. And in the end, that was enough.